Shut up and listen. That's where your real power begins. You wake up, slam your feet on the floor, and your mind is already shouting. Deadlines, messages, notifications, arguments you had yesterday. Your head feels like a crowded market, every voice screaming to be heard. You reach for your phone, scroll through a dozen things you don't care about, and by the time you blink, you've lost control of your own morning. Ever feel like the world's noise owns you? Imagine standing there, chest tight, the coffee cold in your hand, and simply closing your mouth. No chime, no ping, no word, just silence. And in that silence, something clicks. You stop reacting. You stop feeding the chaos. You reclaim the space between impulse and action. Why does that terrify most of us? Because silence demands accountability. It shows you what's really at play inside your skull. It pulls the curtain back on every thought you've been pretending not to hear. And for once, you're not hiding behind 1,000 distractions. When was the last time you gave yourself that gift? To pause the noise, tune out the world, and face yourself in pure quiet. No mantra, no guided breathing app, just you and the space you choose. Is that a scary thought, or is it the strongest move you'll ever make? You won't find this in pep talks or feel-good hashtags. You won't spot it on flashy slides with bullet points promising instant confidence. Real control comes in the moments you refuse to speak, when you decide what deserves your voice and what doesn't. So here's the question I want you to answer right now. What if your silence became your fiercest weapon? Here's what's really happening when you refuse to shut your mouth. You're not communicating, you're bleeding. Every word that spills out when you're triggered, every reaction you can't contain, every argument you just have to win, that's emotional hemorrhaging. And the world sees it. They smell the desperation from a mile away. Most guys think silence means weakness. They've been taught that real men speak their minds, that standing up for yourself requires volume and confrontation. But that's exactly backwards. When you're always reacting, always explaining, always defending your position, you're showing everyone exactly where your buttons are. You're handing them the remote control to your emotional state. Think about the last time someone really got under your skin. Maybe it was your boss questioning your work, or someone cutting you off in traffic, or that passive-aggressive comment from a family member. What did you do? If you're like most people, you either snapped back immediately or spent the next hour rehearsing what you should have said. Either way, they controlled your mental space. They owned you for that moment, maybe longer. The uncomfortable reality is this. Every time you feel compelled to respond, to defend, to explain yourself, you're operating from a place of emotional scarcity. You're acting like your worth depends on winning that moment, proving that point, getting that last word. But strength doesn't need to prove itself. Authority doesn't require explanation. Look at Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history. The guy literally ran the Roman Empire, had absolute authority over millions of people, and could have crushed anyone who opposed him. But his personal writings reveal a man obsessed with self-control, with managing his own reactions rather than controlling others. He wrote about the power of silence, about not being disturbed by external events, about finding strength in restraint rather than inaction. This wasn't a weak man looking for excuses not to fight. This was someone who understood that true power comes from controlling yourself, not controlling your environment. The Stoics figured this out 2,000 years ago, but we're still learning the lesson. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of the most influential philosophers in history, taught that we can't control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. And sometimes, most times, the most powerful response is no response at all. Modern neuroscience backs this up in ways the ancients couldn't have imagined. When you practice deliberate silence, when you create space between stimulus and response, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for executive function, emotional regulation, and strategic thinking. You're breaking the automatic patterns that keep you reactive and building new neural pathways that support genuine self-control. But here's where it gets interesting. The practice of voluntary silence doesn't just change how you respond to others. It changes how others respond to you. When you stop explaining yourself constantly, people start listening more carefully when you do speak. When you stop defending every position, your actual positions carry more weight. When you stop reacting to every provocation, provocations stop working on you. There are 3 uncomfortable realities about silence that most people never face, and each one will change how you see yourself and your relationships. First, harsh reality. Your constant need to respond reveals your insecurity more clearly than anything you could say. Every time someone makes a comment, and you immediately feel that urge to correct them, defend yourself, or set the record straight, you're broadcasting your emotional fragility. Secure people don't need to win every conversation. Confident people don't need to prove their worth in every interaction. When you're always ready with a comeback, always prepared to argue your point, always needing to have the last word, you're telling everyone around you exactly how easily you can be manipulated. Think about the people you respect most. Are they the ones who never stop talking, who always have something to prove? Or are they the ones who speak when they have something worth saying, who listen more than they lecture, who seem unshakable even when everyone else is losing their minds? The difference isn't intelligence or education or even experience. It's emotional sovereignty. It's the ability to choose your battles, to decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you feel compelled to respond, the less people respect your responses. The more you explain yourself, the less convincing you become. The harder you try to control how others see you, the more obvious your desperation becomes. You end up trapped in this endless loop of reaction and justification, never realizing that the way out is to simply stop playing the game. Second, harsh reality. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and that discomfort reveals their true character. When you stop filling every pause with words, stop reacting to every comment, stop engaging with every provocation, something interesting happens. The people around you start revealing who they really are. The ones who respect you become more respectful. The ones who were only interested in pushing your buttons lose interest and move on to easier targets. The ones who genuinely care about your thoughts start asking for them instead of assuming they already know what you think. But this process is uncomfortable for everyone involved, including you. We're social creatures, hardwired to communicate, to connect, to respond to social cues. When you deliberately break those patterns, when you choose not to fill the silence, or answer the question or defend the accusation, you're going against millions of years of evolution. Your brain will scream at you to say something, anything, to restore the social equilibrium. The other person's brain will do the same thing, which is why they often become more agitated when you don't give them the reaction they're expecting. This is where most people break. They can handle the external pressure for a while, but the internal pressure becomes overwhelming. They feel rude or cold, or like they're being unfair to the other person. They start second-guessing themselves, wondering if maybe they should explain their position just this once, just to clear the air. But that's exactly when your silence becomes most powerful. That's when you're building real strength, real self-control, real emotional independence. The discomfort is the point. It's not a bug in the system. It's a feature. When you can sit with that discomfort, when you can let other people's expectations hang in the air without rushing to fulfill them, you've tapped into something most people never experience. You've found the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you discover who you really are when you're not performing for others. Third harsh reality. Most of your words are just noise, and eliminating the noise makes your actual signal infinitely more powerful. Track your conversations for a day. Notice how much of what you say is actually necessary, how much adds value, how much moves anything forward. If you're honest with yourself, you'll find that the vast majority of your words are filler, explanations that no one asked for, justifications that convince no one, reactions that accomplish nothing except making you feel temporarily better. This verbal noise doesn't just waste time. It actively undermines your credibility and influence. When you speak constantly, people learn to tune you out. When you explain everything, they stop listening to your explanations. When you react to everything, your reactions lose all meaning. You become background noise in your own life, always talking but never really communicating, always trying to be heard but never actually being listened to. The paradox is that the less you speak, the more impact your words have. When you eliminate the unnecessary commentary, the defensive responses, the compulsive explanations, what remains carries exponentially more weight. People start paying attention when you talk because they know you're not going to waste their time with meaningless chatter. They start asking for your opinion because they know you won't give it unless you have something worth saying. But this requires a fundamental shift in how you think about communication. Instead of using words to manage your anxiety, to fill uncomfortable spaces, to prove your worth, you start using them strategically. You speak to convey information, to move situations forward, to express genuine thoughts and feelings that matter. Everything else, all the reactive noise, all the defensive chatter, all the compulsive commentary, gets eliminated. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always comfortable. There will be moments when staying silent feels like letting someone win, like being weak, like missing your chance to set the record straight. But those are exactly the moments when your silence becomes most powerful. Those are the moments when you're building the kind of internal strength that no external circumstance can shake. Here's what happens if you don't learn to control your mouth. You become that guy, the one who always has to respond, always has to be right, always has to get the last word. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Professionally, this patterns destroys your credibility faster than almost any other single behavior. Managers notice who can handle criticism without becoming defensive. Clients remember who stays calm under pressure and who falls apart at the first sign of conflict. Colleagues respect people who listen before they speak, who think before they react, who bring solutions instead of just amplifying problems. If you're the person who always has to respond, always has to defend, always has to prove your point, you're advertising your emotional instability to everyone who matters for your career. The damage goes deeper than just professional consequences. When you can't control your reactions, when you're always at the mercy of your emotions, you lose faith in yourself. You start to see yourself as someone who can't be trusted with important decisions, someone who cracks under pressure, someone who's fundamentally unstable. This self-perception becomes self-fulfilling. You avoid challenging situations because you don't trust yourself to handle them well. You second-guess your judgments because you know how often your emotions have led you astray. You end up living a smaller, more cautious life because you can't rely on your own emotional regulation. But the most insidious consequence is how it affects your mental clarity and decision-making ability. When you're constantly reactive, constantly defensive, constantly engaged in verbal combat, your brain never gets a chance to process information clearly. You're always in fight or flight mode, always ready for the next attack, always preparing your next defense. This chronic state of emotional arousal clouds your judgment, narrows your perspective, and makes it impossible to see situations objectively. Years pass this way. You wake up one day and realize you've become known as the person who can't handle feedback, can't stay calm in meetings, can't have a rational discussion about anything important. Your reputation precedes you. People approach you carefully, speak to you diplomatically, treat you like you're made of glass. And the worst part is, you've trained them to do this. Through years of reactive behavior, you've taught everyone in your life that they need to manage your emotions for you. Now, here's what you need to do to break this pattern. And it starts with something so simple, you might think I'm joking. Stop talking for 10 seconds before you respond to anything that triggers you. That's it. 10 seconds of silence. Count them if you have to. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, all the way to 10. During those 10 seconds, don't formulate your response. Don't prepare your defense. Don't plan your counterattack. Just breathe and notice what you're feeling without acting on it. This micro practice of delayed response changes everything, but you have to understand why it works. In those 10 seconds, you're interrupting the automatic pattern that runs your life. You're creating space between the stimulus and your response. You're giving your prefrontal cortex a chance to come online before your amygdala takes control of your mouth. Most people go through their entire lives without ever experiencing this space, without ever realizing they have a choice in how they respond to triggers. Start small. Practice with low-stakes situations first. When someone asks you a simple question, pause for 10 seconds before answering. When someone makes an innocuous comment, count to 10 before responding. Get comfortable with that pause, with that silence, with the feeling of not immediately filling every space with words. Most people will barely notice the delay, but you'll start to notice something profound. You actually have options in how you respond to any situation. As you get more comfortable with this basic practice, you can start applying it to more challenging situations. When someone criticizes your work, 10 seconds of silence before you respond. When someone disagrees with your opinion, 10 seconds before you defend it. When someone says something that normally would trigger an immediate reaction, 10 seconds of breathing space. This isn't about being slow to respond or seeming disengaged. It's about responding from a place of choice rather than compulsion. The second step is learning to recognize the physical sensations that precede reactive behavior. Your body always knows before your mind does when you're about to lose control. Maybe your jaw clenches, or your shoulders tense up, or your breathing becomes shallow, or you feel heat rising in your chest. Everyone's early warning system is different, but everyone has one. The problem is most people ignore these signals until it's too late, until they're already in full reaction mode. Start paying attention to your body throughout the day, especially during conversations or interactions that tend to trigger you. Notice the subtle changes in your posture, your breathing, your muscle tension. When you feel those early warning signs, that's your cue to implement the 10-second rule. Don't wait until you're already angry or defensive or hurt. Catch the reaction at the physical level before it becomes an emotional explosion. This body awareness serves another crucial purpose. It helps you distinguish between genuine threats and phantom threats. Most of the time, when you feel triggered, when you feel like you need to defend yourself or prove your point, there's no actual threat present. Someone expressing a different opinion isn't attacking you. Someone asking a challenging question isn't trying to destroy you. Someone disagreeing with your position isn't declaring war on your identity. But your body might react as if all of these things are life or death situations. When you can recognize the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat at the physical level, you can choose your responses more wisely. Real threats require action. Perceived threats usually require nothing more than breathing and patience. Learning to tell the difference will save you from wasting enormous amounts of energy on battles that don't need to be fought. The third step is developing what I call strategic silence. This isn't just about not talking. It's about using silence as an active tool to achieve your goals. Strategic silence involves knowing when your words will help and when they'll hurt, when engagement will serve you and when it will drain you, when explanation will clarify and when it will complicate. Strategic silence means letting other people fill the uncomfortable pauses instead of always rushing to fill them yourself. It means allowing questions to hang in the air until the person who asked them starts providing their own answers. It means giving criticism space to breathe rather than immediately defending against it. It means letting other people reveal their true motivations instead of trying to guess what they're thinking. This level of silence requires confidence because it feels risky. What if the other person thinks you're stupid? What if they assume you agree with them? What if they think you don't care? These fears are natural, but they're usually unfounded. Most of the time, strategic silence makes you appear more thoughtful, more in control, more worthy of respect. People start bringing their better selves to conversations with you because they know you won't tolerate nonsense or get drawn into pointless arguments. But here's where the real transformation happens. When you master the art of voluntary silence, when you learn to choose your words instead of being chosen by them, something shifts in your entire presence. People start treating you differently, not because you're trying to intimidate them or manipulate them, but because you're no longer easy to manipulate yourself. You become someone who can be trusted with sensitive information because you don't feel compelled to repeat everything you hear. You become someone who can be relied upon in crisis situations because you don't add to the chaos with unnecessary commentary. You become someone whose opinions carry weight because you don't cheapen them by expressing them constantly. Have you ever noticed how differently people treat someone who speaks rarely versus someone who never stops talking? The person who speaks rarely commands attention when they open their mouth. People lean in, listen carefully, remember what was said. The person who never stops talking becomes background noise, even when they have something important to say. This isn't about becoming antisocial or disengaged. It's about becoming intentional. It's about using your voice as a precision instrument rather than a blunt weapon. It's about saying what needs to be said when it needs to be said, and trusting the power of silence to do everything else. Look, here's the bottom line. You can keep living your life at the mercy of every trigger, every opinion, every person who knows exactly which buttons to push. You can keep bleeding your energy into pointless arguments and defensive explanations that convince no one and exhaust everyone, including yourself. You can keep being that person who always has to respond, always has to be right, always has to get the last word in. Or you can choose something different. You can choose to become the kind of person who doesn't need to prove anything because their presence speaks for itself. The kind of person who doesn't waste energy on battles that don't matter because they're saving it for the ones that do. The kind of person who commands respect not through volume or aggression, but through the quiet confidence of someone who has nothing to prove and nothing to defend. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected or antisocial. It's about becoming strategic with your energy, intentional with your words, and sovereign over your own emotional state. It's about understanding that your peace of mind is more valuable than winning any argument, that your self-respect is more important than anyone else's approval, and that your mental clarity is worth more than all the explanations and justifications you think you owe the world. The choice is yours, and it's simpler than you think. Next time someone tries to pull you into their chaos, tries to make you defend yourself, tries to get you to explain or justify or prove something, just remember, you don't have to dance to their music. You can choose silence. You can choose peace. You can choose to keep your power instead of giving it away to anyone who asks for it. The world is full of noise, full of people desperate to be heard, full of voices competing for attention and validation. But the real power belongs to those who know when to speak and when to stay silent, who understand that sometimes the most profound statement you can make is no statement at all. What kind of man do you want to be? The one who reacts to everything, or the one who chooses his battles? The one who explains himself to death, or the one whose presence needs no explanation? If you're ready to stop being controlled by your impulses and start controlling them instead, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's another video coming up next that's going to show you exactly how to use this silence to build the kind of presence that makes people stop and pay attention, even when you're not saying a word. Until then, practice what we talked about today. 10 seconds of silence before you respond to anything that triggers you. Your future self will thank you. Until next time, see you in the next one.